Hello and welcome back to Shakesyear. We are working on Richard III. Today we get to hear from Lord Stanley, who is otherwise known as the Earl of Derby, from what the folio calls Act 5, Scene 2, what other versions call Act 5, Scene 3, and what's going on is a war. A war is brewing. It's going to happen like tomorrow morning. Richard has alienated just about everybody except for Catesby and Ratcliffe, but he does have an army with him because he's the king, and that's what kings do, and that's what kings get, is they get armies. But he had sent Lord Stanley north to get more men to build a bigger army, and he's holding Lord Stanley's son hostage until such time as Stanley comes back with said army. Richard is also married or gotten permission or making plans to marry. I think he's making plans to marry young Elizabeth, who was the sister of Princes Edward and Richard, who were killed. And if women could inherit the throne, she would have been next in line for it. But whatever, that's not happening. But it is for that reason that he figured he should marry her, because that would solidify his place. On the other side of things, we've gotten to meet Richmond, who would be the next in line for the throne on the Lancastrian side if the Lancasters were winning the War of the Roses right now, but the Yorks are, so he's not. And Stanley is the one who most of Richard's former allies who are still alive, because a lot of them have been killed, remember, a lot of them defected to Richmond's side, including Lord Stanley, but Lord Stanley has not been overt about wanting to help Richmond yet. So he's sent north. He sent a letter to Richmond to let him know sort of what was going on in Richard's camp and where he was camped out, but he's still at least playing the part of being on Richard's side, if for no other reason because Richard is holding his son hostage and will kill him if he doesn't come back with an army. So here in Act 5, Scene 3, as it is known in versions that are not the folio, we've been bouncing back and forth between the camps because Richard and his group are setting up tents and all that sort of thing, not that far away from Richmond and his group. So tomorrow morning is going to be war. Lord Stanley has set up his camp about a half a mile away from Richard's camp. So somebody from Richard's camp went to tell Stanley that he better show up with the army toot sweet or else the kid's going to die. Somebody from Richmond's camp also sent somebody to Stanley to get Stanley to come back to Richmond's camp and give him an update on what's going on. So at this point in the scene, Stanley has arrived at Richmond's camp and comes in, and Richmond's like, hey, how's it going? How's my mom? All that sort of thing. Because Lord Stanley is also Richmond's stepfather. So technically the child who's being held hostage is Richmond's brother, or maybe stepbrother or half-brother or something along those lines. So anyway, it makes sense for him to ask how his mom is doing, because Richmond's mom is Lord Stanley's wife. And Lord Stanley replies, I, by attorney, bless thee from thy mother, who prays continually for Richmond's good. So much for that. The silent hours steal on, and flaky darkness breaks within the east. In brief, for so the season bids us be, prepare thy battle early in the morning, and put thy fortune to the arbitrament of bloody strokes and mortal staring war. I, as I may, that which I would, I cannot, with best advantage will deceive the time, and aid thee in this doubtful shock of arms. But, on thy side, I may not be too forward, lest being seen, thy brother, tender George, be executed in his father's sight. Farewell. The leisure and the fearful time cuts off the ceremonious vows of love and ample interchange of sweet discourse, which so long sundered friends should dwell upon. God give us leisure for these rites of love. Once more adieu. Be valiant and speed well. So he comes in and he's very to the point. He's like, your mom's great, and we don't have time to catch up and have these little niceties and that sort of thing. So moving on, because it's also almost morning and I have to go take an army to Richard's side, what you're going to do is you're going to attack first thing in the morning, very first thing in the morning. And I'm going to let Richard know that you're going to attack a little bit later, than that, as best I can, because, I can't be seen to be a traitor. I can't be overtly on your side, because otherwise your brother is going to get killed right in front of me, but I'm going to do what I can. So be ready to attack first thing in the morning. I'll tell them that you're coming like mid-morning, whatever, and hopefully you'll be able to catch them off guard and have the advantage that way. And then he's like, yeah, and time's short, so I gotta go, and hopefully at some future point we'll be able to catch up and chat and be, family, that sort of thing. And as he is leaving, or right before he leaves, Richmond gets to say some things which lead into tomorrow's monologue. So he'll say a little bit, and then Lord Stanley leaves, and then he's got a little bit more. So I'm not going to tell you yet what he says. You'll just have to tune in tomorrow to find out. I'll see you then. Mwah.